I'm actually surprised it works that well. I wasn't too sure when I started this. Yeah, I think it turned out pretty sick actually. You don't see too often like a one-piece aluminum shifter. I went into it with no plan. It shifts pretty good actually. It's really short. It's easy to find gears. Reverse gear, you might have to, just like any other vehicle, you might have to throw it into or let out the clutch a little bit to get that to your drive shaft to rotate in the right spot to get it into reverse. But yeah, it's turning backwards. Now, for those of you that don't know, the plan is this is only used really when changing overall what you're driving. So obviously if you need reverse, you can back up into your parking spot, whatever the case may be. Chances are third gear in this transmission is going to be really good for like autocross, something like that, really short tracks, maybe even in the city. I think the max speed that I would get out of all 6 gears on the bike, I think is about 130 kilometers an hour, something like that. Now, if I want to have, a little bit higher top speed, I can drop that into 4th. And technically 5th gear is just going to be ripping around for on the highway. And I think I figured it out once, and the top speed, theoretical top speed, was over 200 in 5th gear, which is probably never going to happen on an open, well, it's a Jeep. It's less aerodynamic than a cow. So let's be honest, I'm probably never going to travel 200 in this thing. I probably don't want to, but that's going to be really low RPM when driving on the highway. So like I said, daily driver, I want to drive this thing. I want to use it. I don't want it to be a trailer queen. I would love to just hit the road for a whole day and hopefully not burn through too much fuel. So that's why this is being implemented rather than electric reverse. This gives me so many more options. And yeah, I think it's pretty cool. It's going to work out great. Here's how I built it.
Okay, so I started off with a big chunk of aluminum here, and right now I'm building the base where the actual linkage is going to connect. So you'll see how I just started off, laid it down here to size, and then I got to drill out the inside. And then of course take this side down to the same size. I tried scoring the 2 lines that I needed here, but it spun as I was scoring that line, so I ended up just marking it later on. And take the inside hole to final dimensions, and then I have to tap it for a 5/8 size thread, which proved to be quite difficult actually. I'm not sure if I didn't quite get the right ID on that hole, but yeah, it was pretty tough to turn that one in. And here I've already drilled the holes that go through the side, and then I'm using a dowel to make sure that I'm notching it out exactly perpendicular to that. Get those cut out and bang out what I can and grind it all off, file it, you know, make it as smooth as I can. And next up was starting the actual shifter itself, and as you can see, because I wanted to do a one piece instead of a thread on knob, is a lot of material to hog off of there, because I needed it to start off as the diameter of the top of it and then take the rest off as I needed. So I knew I needed this 5/8 shaft down at the bottom. So we started off with that, and then I'm able to flip it around and begin work on the actual shape of the shifter. I guess here I'm just roughing out some taking off a bunch of material. Still don't know what I'm doing for a shape at this point. I thought I was going to keep it really skinny and then do a wider knob at the top, but as it kind of progressed, I sort of liked the baseball bat type look on it. Seemed to work out just great. Here I'm doing a quick inlay for my shift pattern piece that I'm going to inlay in the end. And then I took out the grinder because it was just the easiest way to make it really nice and smooth and finalize the shape that I wanted. And of course sand it all down. And I even took the time to polish it, even though I'm not certain I'm going to leave it that way. And for some reason with DaVinci Resolve, which is the editing program, when you go above 1,000 times speed, the audio gets really messed up. So there's a bunch of times in this video where the grinding sound doesn't match up with what I'm actually doing. Sorry about that. It's a pain in the butt to deal with, but you know, it's just something I gotta live with. So here I'm getting rid of the actual the centering hole there, and I'm countersinking that in a little bit more for that disc that you guys will see later on.
Alright, next thing is I gotta figure out roughly how far away from the back here I want the rear shifter. There's gonna be three levers here. You know, I got the Porsche, I'm gonna have an e-brake, and I've got to have the motorbike transmission shifter here as well. So I want to get this one back and kind of out of my way. I think that might even be like as far as right here. Like Doesn't need to be comfortable to use because you're not using it for anything really other than shifting it into reverse. There's gonna be times, obviously, when I go on a road trip and I want to put it into 5th gear, I'll have to stop. I don't know that for sure yet. Put it into 5th, and then you know, you'll get a lower RPM. Actually, I should be able to shift that, because when I put in the clutch, it's going to stop putting forces into the drive shaft, just like the original Porsche would too. When you push in the clutch, it would stop spinning the whatever they call that. It's not really a drive shaft, it's just that little dowel that they have going from the engine to here. So it's pretty much doing the same thing. So in reality, say I was just cruising in 6th gear on the bike, you know, just low RPM, and you know, I wanted to hit the highway, go a bit faster, I should be able to shift that into 5th on this transmission, and then you know, the RPM should drop a whole bunch. I gotta figure out a way to lift the whole housing up. Like, I used one of those Uniball cups that I used for the suspension, so I gotta figure out a way to lift the whole cup up high enough that, you know, the swinging underside doesn't hit, and so that it, you know, kind of looks nice too. So that's one of the next things I got to do, and then set it up in here, and you know, then maybe I'll play around with where it's actually going to sit. Okay, so this is basically all the pieces that I'm going to need. So I got the main bearing basically, and it has a couple of sleeves. Once it's tight in there, go ahead and put that in. Put that in. There you go. So basically it is a fully functioning shifter once I make a rod to go to the transmission. So I made this shaft to go to the transmission and flattened it to fit in there. Drilled a hole, so now this is, it's a little bit snug right now. But I don't want it to be too loose either, so I probably have the bolt just a little bit too tight. But basically the pin that's going to go through this for that little tiny U-joint needs to be exact, because that is going to set the angle that this sits at all the time. Yeah, so this little U-joint here is, you can see it's got a pin that goes through it. And then it has a little ring clip that goes around them to hold them in place. But this is set by the transmission, this side, because it already had a hole sitting in it. So now I have to attach this to the transmission, see if this is exactly vertical, and if it is, then I gotta set this exactly vertical before I drill the hole. Do some really precise measuring here. Let's say 2 fingers above there, and let's see what I got for pipe. So this is a spare chunk of the drive shaft material. So I started off by figuring out exactly where my notches had to go in order to make it a nice cone shape up to that that little ball joint there. And after squishing it in the vise, then I put it into the press and pressed it into a small tube, and that's what, you know, really made the nice shape. So
Then I welded her all up here, and then finish it off by grinding it nice and smooth. Alright guys, new day. So I took this and got it all welded up and smoothed out, you know, as best I can. Now next thing I got to do is, I was playing around with different widths to notch this front section out, because that's where the shifter comes in like this. It's too tall. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that out, and then we can go and try and figure out how it's going to be mounted. So after this part, I actually ended up cutting it all the way around in a circle, and so that it laid nice and flat. It just worked out better that way, sitting on this mounting plate that I'm cutting out right now. So clean off all the old rust off of this piece of scrap I had laying around. Get it nice and centered. And let's grab some chunks of aluminum just to keep everything nice and flat. Clamp it down using that. And why not, let's whip out the MIG for one or two things in this whole build. And next up, I put it all into place and somehow don't have any footage of that, so there it is. Alright, well that about wraps up that project. The only thing left to do was the little disc. I don't know if you guys can see that. The little disc for the top of the shift knob. And I made some discs and I sent them out to somebody who claimed that they could do this type of laser etching. But unfortunately, that is not what I got back. What I wanted to do was have all the black looking stuff really, really deep, so just the letters were showing up really high. And so if anybody knows somebody with one of those types of lasers, it is a specific type. I want just the lettering and the lines to show up really tall on this, and the rest of it to be quite thin. And then I'm going to epoxy it into the top. So, if anybody knows of somebody that's got one, I'm not looking for a handout, I'll pay for it. I already paid for these and did not get what I want. So somebody please help me out, point me in the right direction to someone that can do it, and then we can finish off the top of that. But I thank you guys very much for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode. We're tackling... Sorry, this was probably a really long episode as well, and I apologize. It was a lot more work than anticipated to just, you know, slap together and make a shifter, right? The next one is probably going to be even longer. In fact, I have put in a lot more work into the next one, because we're building a one-of-a-kind custom dry sump oil tank and waited on parts, and you know, it's a little fancier than it probably needed to be, but it's pretty much done now, so hopefully I can get the next one uploaded before I go back to work. And yeah, we'll see you guys on the next one.